You know what's wild? In 2026, when literally everyone and their grandmother is on at least 3 different social media platforms, there's still this quiet group of people who just aren't. No Instagram, no TikTok, no Facebook, nothing. And I'm not talking about people who deleted their accounts in a rage after a bad breakup, or folks doing a temporary digital detox. I'm talking about people who genuinely, consistently choose not to participate in social media at all. So what's going on in their heads? Are they happier, more anxious, secretly judging the rest of us? Today, we're diving into the fascinating psychology of the social media abstainers. First, let's get one thing straight. People who don't use social media aren't a monolith. Research shows they generally fall into a few categories. There are the principled resistors, who have specific ideological or ethical reasons for staying off these platforms. They're concerned about privacy, data mining, the attention economy, or the psychological impacts of these technologies. These folks have usually read books like The Age of Surveillance Capitalism and can tell you exactly why they're out. Then you have the burned out, people who used to be active on social media but found it draining, anxiety-inducing, or just not worth their time anymore. They might have experienced cyberbullying, comparison fatigue, or just realized they were spending hours scrolling with nothing to show for it. There are also the simply disinterested, people who genuinely don't see the appeal. They're not making a statement, they'd just prefer other ways of spending their time and connecting with people. And finally, the practical minimalists, who see social media as clutter in an already busy life. They've calculated the cost-benefit and decided it doesn't add enough value. So, what do psychological studies tell us about people who opt out of social media? Higher levels of intentionality. Research suggests that people who abstain from social media tend to be more deliberate about how they spend their time and attention. They're less likely to engage in mindless scrolling and more likely to choose activities consciously. This isn't about being better than anyone else, it's just a different relationship with technology and time. Different social needs. Interestingly, studies show mixed results here. Some non-users have smaller but deeper social circles. They might prefer quality over quantity when it comes to relationships. Others are actually quite social. They just fulfill those needs through in-person interactions, phone calls, or older communication technologies like email. Lower fear of missing out or higher. This one's fascinating. Some research indicates that people who don't use social media experience less FOMO because they're simply not exposed to the constant stream of other people's highlight reels. But other studies suggest that some non-users actually experience more anxiety about missing out on information, invitations, or social happenings that get organized primarily through social platforms. It really depends on the individual and their social context. Greater comfort with uncertainty. Think about it. Social media gives us constant updates about people's lives, current events, trending topics. People who opt out often have a higher tolerance for not knowing what everyone is doing at all times. They're comfortable with ambiguity and don't feel the need to be constantly informed. When the researchers interview people who don't use social media, certain themes keep coming up. More present attention. Without the constant pull to check notifications or the habit of reaching for a phone during any moment of boredom, many report being more engaged with whatever they're doing, whether that's a conversation, a book, or just sitting with their own thoughts. Reduced comparison and envy. This is a big one. The comparison trap is real, and studies consistently show that social media use is correlated with increased feelings of envy and inadequacy. Non-users often report feeling more content with their own lives simply because they're not constantly measuring themselves against curated versions of other people's lives. Better sleep. Many non-users report better sleep quality, which makes sense given the research on blue light exposure and the stimulating nature of social media content before bed. Deeper relationships. This is subjective, but many people who abstain say their friendships feel more substantial. When you can't just keep up with someone through their stories or posts, you actually have to reach out and talk to them. That effort can create stronger bonds. But it's not all sunshine and deeper connections. People who don't use social media face real challenges in our increasingly digital world. Social exclusion. This is probably the biggest one. When your friend group organizes everything through a Facebook event or group chat on Instagram, not being on those platforms can mean literally missing out on invitations. Some non-users report feeling invisible to their social networks or having to constantly remind people to include them through other channels. Professional limitations. For many careers, especially creative fields, entrepreneurship, or anything involving personal branding, not having a social media presence can be a genuine professional handicap. Networking often happens on LinkedIn or Twitter, and visibility matters. Information gaps. Whether it's local community news, school updates, or just cultural moments that everyone else is talking about, non-users can feel out of the loop. And in some cases, this can have practical consequences, like missing important announcements. The burden of explanation. Many non-users talk about constantly having to explain or justify their choice, which can be exhausting. There's often an assumption that they're either technophobic, pretentious, or hiding something. Here's what I find most interesting. The existence of people who thrive without social media challenges some of our assumptions about these platforms being essential to modern life. It suggests that while social media offers real benefits for connection, information, and entertainment, it's not actually indispensable for well-being or even for having a full social life. The people who've opted out are essentially running an experiment that shows us alternative ways of existing in the digital age. Their experiences also highlight that the costs of social media, things like attention fragmentation, comparison anxiety, privacy concerns, are real enough that some people rationally decide those costs outweigh the benefits. So, are people who don't use social media psychologically different? Sort of. They tend to be more intentional, more comfortable with missing out, and often more focused on depth over breadth in their relationships. But they're also dealing with real challenges in a world that increasingly assumes everyone is connected through these platforms. The truth is, there's no one-size-fits-all answer to whether social media is good or bad for any individual person. Some people genuinely thrive with it. Others genuinely thrive without it. And most of us are probably somewhere in the messy middle, getting some value while also experiencing some costs. The people who've opted out aren't heroes or weirdos. They're just people who've made a different calculation about what serves their life and psychology best. And honestly, that self-awareness might be the most psychologically healthy thing of all. What do you think? Are you someone who's considered quitting social media? Or are you perfectly happy with how you use it? Let me know in the comments. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, maybe share it. Oh, wait, half my audience isn't on social media. Well, tell a friend in person, I guess. Thanks for watching.